Aloha and good day, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. My name is Juergen Steinmetz, joining you from the breaking news show and live stream in Honolulu together with eTurbo News, Hawaii News Online, Aviation, and our other families of publication. With me, as most of the time, is Dr. Peter Tarlow, our co-host and president of the World Tourism Network. He's currently in Washington, D.C., getting ready for the storm. While the weather here in Honolulu is really warm and nice and very pleasant, I understand there's something more cloudy on your horizon there, Peter.
Well, this might be the calm before the storm. The last week, the weather in Washington has been absolutely beautiful. Blue skies, wonderful temperature. You just need a light spring coat. But the weather forecast tells us, and of course you never know, but that the remnants of the hurricane that so decimated Florida will be coming to the Washington area on Saturday. So we are expecting a lot of rain. Of course, it may or may not show up, but hopefully it will go off to sea someplace. I know the hurricane has went down to a tropical storm when it got to Orlando, and now it appears to be over water again, and it is turning back into a hurricane. So this is very typical of hurricanes. I think this is really the first major hurricane of the 2022 season, and it's been a whopper. So people, especially on the tourism side of Florida, on the west side of the Gulf side, have really suffered quite a lot. So it's been quite an interesting experience.
Yeah, it's really devastating what happened. I talked to a good friend. She lives in St. Petersburg in Florida, right opposite the bay from Tampa.
Tampa.
And her apartment, she's on the second floor. But when I talked to her, she said, I cannot go downstairs. Everything is flooded. It's like a wild river down here. And
Yes.
she was there with her kids, hiding on the upper floor. So people are going through quite a bit.
Yes, they are.
Florida.
It's quite a lot. And of course, lots of other stuff is going on in the world at the same time. We're hoping that Mexico is going to be able to launch a major tourism security project in Cancun and in Playa de Carmen in the next few weeks. And we'll be giving you regular updates, assuming that happens. I really won't know for the next day or two if that's a given, but I'm hoping it will be. And that's really going to be great for Mexico because Mexico has everything in the world to offer in tourism. Unfortunately, the one thing it does not have is good security, and this will be a wonderful way for Mexico to put that missing piece into action to be able to. I'm really hoping that they're able to get their act together. They've had some government changes in the state of Quintana Roo, and that's set things back a little bit, but hopefully we'll be able to recover. So that's the big news. There's another big news is going on. Of course, it's major elections going on in Brazil and how that will impact tourism. And that will be, again, between the current president and his main opposition, who was a president prior to this time. And we'll have to see which way Brazil goes and how that's going to impact its tourism industry.
Yeah, and of course, election is an issue everywhere in tourism. We see a new tourism minister in Kenya, Najib Balala, who was one of the longest serving ministers in Africa, is now no longer the Secretary of Tourism and Wildlife and replaced by a woman, a former deputy governor of a province, I understand, in Kenya that had very little influence on the Kenyan politics. So we're probably going to see some changes in Kenya and in East Africa because of it. The interesting news here that is the former Secretary Najib Balala, who is, by the way, also one of our heroes here at World Tourism Network, may be running for Secretary General for the World Tourism Organization in 2025. When I asked him, he said properly, but he said he wants to take a rest till beginning of the next year before he
well, that would be very interesting.
Yes. So yes, so there's a lot of shifting. We saw elections in in Italy recently, where really a right-wing government seems to be taking over, what is, in my opinion, quite a scary development. We may see several similar developments in France. And then, of course, we have the ongoing situation with Ukraine. We have the situation with Russia having some kind of elections in the Donbas region, asking
Well,
uh,
I'm not
their
sure I
people
would call those.
yeah, we cannot call it collection. I think
I
asking
don't think
people
I would call those
under
elections. I would call, yes,
gunpoint to make decisions
yes.
to be part of Russia, and that's supposed to be announced by Russian President Putin tomorrow. And
And I don't
there's
think
a
the
lot
election.
going on.
I don't think the elections per se are so important. I think what's important is that the Russians who made sure they would win these elections are then going to incorporate those territories into Russia, and then any attack on them will be considered an attack on Russia, and that could be a really major problem. And there's potential for all sorts of new types of war that may take place in the Ukraine. The situation may not be settling down; it may be getting worse. And of course, we're going into winter, and that means there can be lots of issues taking place with lack of oil through much of Europe, the question of the costs going up. Airlines are expecting, as you know, major cost rises. Uh, Last year, it used to cost me about $800 for a ticket from Houston to Tel Aviv. And I just had to buy some tickets for people, and the cost was $1,700. Uh, so it's more than double the cost of airfare. And right now, people are still traveling. I wonder if that's not the residue from the COVID period, but you really wonder, will that continue? Or will people start saying, you know what, we just can't afford to travel. It's too expensive.
Well, but Peter, it really depends where you go. There are expensive destinations, like you rightfully said, Israel, what is a high demand destination, but there are also low demand destinations that are beautiful to travel to. For
Yeah.
example, I can tell you airfares right now into Europe, into Central Europe, are quite expensive. So going to London, Germany, or France is quite cheap, quite expensive. But when you actually strangely extend your ticket and go down to destinations like Malta, Montenegro, or even Dubai and Istanbul, um, it goes quite a bit cheaper. Even if you change planes in Frankfurt,
Yeah.
it cuts the airfare in half and going further. So I think it really takes a little bit of
Yeah.
research. So if
So
you're
that's going to
open,
be also a question, because there's really two types of travel. There's business travel and there's leisure travel. And if you're just going for business, you don't have the time to be able to do that. If you're going for, and also your business may not accept it. In other words, if you hand into a government a ticket, say New York to Warsaw with a 2 week stay in London, so you just added Warsaw or Malta or wherever you're adding to bring down the fare, your employer may very well reject that ticket.
but Peter, I'm sorry, no, that's not really the message I wanted to bring across. We know business travel is different and business is ready to pay higher prices. But what I'm saying on the leisure side, when you select
Yes,
your destination and you have a budget, don't look at the classic destinations. Look at secondary destinations that are equally
yes,
worth visiting.
sure.
That's what I meant with this.
Yes, I understand that. I'm just wanting to point out that, it depends on what the reason you're traveling for. But you're absolutely right. For leisure, you can have a lot more flexibility. Of course, the other problem is, and it's going to be good and bad, the dollar is extremely strong right now. The euro is extremely weak. The pound is even weaker. Um, so that's, if you are earning in dollars, US dollars, you're in great shape for traveling in US dollars. On the other hand, if you are looking at the stock market or at recession, much of the Western world is having some real problems. The stock market had a major dip again today. They finally announced that we are officially in recession. And how will that impact leisure travel? Will people be afraid to get on an airplane? Will airplanes have to raise their costs as oil becomes more expensive? So these are questions that we really have to consider. one of the things the tourism industry should be thinking about really carefully is offering the best customer service possible to compensate for high costs of travel and making it not squeezing you in like a sardine, but rather coming up with ways to show people smiles and other things just to make people really feel comfortable about traveling again. Because there's, we're just recovering from COVID. It's not even 100% done yet.
No, of course not. And the world is going on. Tourism is coming back. It's booming, but we don't know. It's fragile. We don't know because all the other factors. Inflation rate in Germany, I saw this morning, is 10%, the highest since 1954. That's before I was born. So that these are all quite scary numbers, And
So even though the euro is worth less, if you have inflation of 10%, then it's costing you more to buy. You need more euros, even though you can get the euros for less money from a U.S. perspective. And of course, if you're a European traveling, then you're traveling with a weaker currency.
Yeah, no, of course.
Places in the Caribbean, for example, are very dependent on European travel. Places like Curacao, Aruba, lots of these places are dependent on Dutch travel, German travel, British travel, and the pound is very weak. And for example, southern Spain is very dependent, and southern Portugal, on British travelers. So, if you have a weak pound, those people may be a little bit more afraid to travel. Now, they might not. Who knows?
Yeah, no, I rebooked my hotels this morning. I had secured for a US dollar rate for the World Travel Market, what is from November 6th to the 10th. So anyone going, just let me know. We'd be happy to meet you for a cup of coffee if we have time. But I rebooked my hotels and now I'm saving 27%. I figured out for the same hotel because I rebooked it. It's because of currency differences. So yes, it really does make a difference.
Yes, it does. So that's the good news. I don't know what the inflation rate is in London, but London should be cheaper than it's been in a long time.
Yeah, and it's definitely cheaper, but it's still not a cheap destination.
No, London is never an inexpensive destination.
It's a wonderful city to live. It's almost worth spending the extra money.
But it's just less expensive. We didn't say it's not expensive. We just said it's less expensive. Well, I think these are some of the important things we're starting to see in tourism. It's really going to take a lot of creativity for the people of tourism to make sure that this is a sustainable industry over the next few years. And I think it's going to have I think we're going to see some economic ups and downs. Of course, we have to pray that the world doesn't become too bellicose and that war doesn't break out either in Europe or in Asia or wherever. Because without security, there is no tourism. And I'm proud of the Mexicans starting to work on this issue. We have to really try to get this issue across much of Latin America. And if we can create a secure tourism industry, I think, and a safe tourism industry, then I think we will have a sustainable tourism industry.
No, absolutely, Peter. Well, that summarizes, I think, for today. And
yes,
we'll see you again
very soon.
And also stay tuned. We have another segment also dealing a little bit with resilience and security. But Peter, I hope you stay dry and in Washington over the next day.
Chat over the weekend. I'll be here till the 6th of October. So, and then I'm looking forward to getting back to Texas.
Yeah, and hear from ETN, anyone who's listening to us. We'll be attending the IMEX trade show in Las Vegas, what is going on. We're actually going to be exhibiting there. So if you attend IMEX, what is, of course, the most important event in the world when it comes to meeting and incentive industry, it's at the Mandalay Bay Hotel in Las Vegas, taking place from October 11th to the 14th, if I'm not mistaken. And after this, we're going to be attending the SCAL conference in Croatia. That is going on from the 14th to the 18th of October, and this is followed by the World Travel Market in London from the 10th to the 13th, if I'm not mistaken, of November. So anyone attending there, let us know. And we'd be happy to catch up with our readers and our followers. And anyone else who wanted to listen to this segment again, stay tuned. It's going to repeat most likely over the next 24 hours. And after this, it's archived on our YouTube, Vimeo channels, and of course on breakingnewsshow.com. And this is all linked, of course, from any page on eTurbo News. Well, aloha from Hawaii. Good evening to Washington. And
good evening from Washington, D.C.
And please stay tuned for the next segment now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.